Outcome 16, I can combine like terms to simplify complex expressions. And you'll look at this mess here and you're like, oh my gosh, that just looks like a headache. I feel for you. This is tough stuff. You have mixed numbers, you have fractions, you have decimals over here, you got different terms to combine. It is a headache, but we can get through this. Let's just do it. So the first thing you got to do is you got to use the distributive property, and you can see that we have a fraction here, parentheses, that means multiply, distribute that fraction into to both terms inside the parentheses. Now, slow down here. You're not distributing 2/5, you're distributing negative 2/5 to both terms inside the parentheses, right? Because it's minus 2/5. So that's a key problem that a lot of people are going to have. But you got to distribute the sign to the left of the term. And this is a minus 2/5, so it's a negative 2/5 to be distributed to both terms inside the parentheses. Okay, so we have 7 1/2, and then we're going to distribute this negative 2/5 times negative 20a plus negative 2/5 times 25, and everything else just comes down. Negative 13a plus 9.2. And an easy way to check to make sure you're doing this right is if you're distributing a negative, well, that's going to change the signs inside the parentheses, right? Because multiplying by a negative changes the signs. If you have a positive, multiplying by a negative will make it a negative. If you have a negative, multiplying by a negative will make it a positive. So the first thing we had here is a negative. It's going to become a positive, and this is going to go from being a positive to a negative. And you can see that works, right? Because now we have 7 1/2. Negative 2 times negative 20 is positive 40a follows. So positive 40a divided by 5. And then we have plus a negative 2 times 25, which is negative 50 over 5, because 5 times 1 is 5. So there we go. We went from having a negative and a positive to having a positive and a negative because we multiplied them both by a negative, which changes the sign. That simplifies to 7 1/2 plus, this becomes a positive, right? Because a negative times a negative is a positive. Positive 8a, because 40 divided by 5 is 8, minus, because negative 50 divided by 5 is negative 10. So plus 8 minus 10, then we follow with the negative 13a plus 9.2. Okay, now we're ready to combine like terms. And let's start with the terms that have the variable a in it. We can see we have 8a and negative 13a. Now the key here is you have to remember that the sign preceding the term is the all-important sign. So this is positive 8a minus 13a, because this is the plus comes before the 8a and the minus comes before the 13a. So it's positive 8a minus 13a. And we can see that I've drawn our little boxing method out here. We have positive 8a, and then we lose 13. So if we have the stacked boxes, 8 and then 13, what's the height of the mystery box? Well, that would be 13 minus 8, or 5. Here we're 5 below 0, so that's negative 5. Plus 8a minus 13a becomes negative 5a. And this 7 1/2 comes down, negative 10 comes down, and plus 9.2 comes down. All right, now what do we have to do? Well, we have 7 1/2 minus 10, right? 7 1/2 minus 10. And let's help us out. Let's just convert this to a decimal. We know 7 1/2 is like 7 plus 1/2. 7 and 1/2 is like 7 plus 1/2, which is the same as 7 plus 1 divided by 2. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5, because that's a half. So 7 and 1/2 equals 7.5. Now we have 7.5 minus 10, right? Because we have to skip over this negative 5a because we're dealing with like terms. And negative 5a can't talk to a term that doesn't have just an a in it. So we have 7.5 minus 10. Again, with the boxing method, we go up 7.5, we go down 10. What's the height of this missing box? Well, that'd be 10 minus 7.5, which is 2.5, so here negative 2.5. And those two terms combine to negative 2.5. So where are we? Let's just write it again. We're negative 2.5 minus 5a plus 9.2. Again, we can't, this negative 5a doesn't talk to either of these terms because they're not like terms, but these two terms can talk to each other. So let's do negative 5a, which is, no, I'm sorry, negative 2.5, so the box goes below 0 to start, plus 9.2, so that's 9.2 going north, starting where the negative 2.5 ended. And what's the height of that missing box? Well, it'll be 9.2 minus 2.5, which is 6.7. And here we're going above 0, so that'd be positive 6.7. So here we have positive 6.7 minus 5a. So note that because of the commutative property of addition, if we think of this as 6.7 plus negative 5a, we could switch the terms around and have it be negative 5a plus 6.7. It doesn't matter which term comes first, so long as the negative is always with the 5a. So we could have negative 5a plus 6.7, which is the same as 6.7 minus 5a because of the commutative property of addition. And if we wanted to write this as as fractions, as mixed numbers, well, that's the same thing, right? Negative 5a plus 6 and 7/10, or 6 and 7/10 minus 5a. They're all ways of writing a simplified expression, which we started with, which was a headache, but we can do this, we can be successful. That's learning outcome 16.